A hardened human mercenary named Jake Morrison crash lands on a remote alien world after a failed rescue mission and finds himself nursed back to health by two curious alien women from the peaceful Valari species who have never encountered humans before and are fascinated by his strange resilience and refusal to give up, despite catastrophic injuries that would have killed any member of their kind 3 times over. The first healer, named Lyra, becomes intrigued when Jake survives a poison that should have stopped his heart within minutes, while the second, named Kira, watches in amazement as his body temperature spikes to levels that would boil Valari blood. Yet he merely sweats and complains about fever. As Jake recovers, he teaches them about human endurance and pain tolerance through demonstrations that horrify and captivate them equally, like holding his breath underwater for 4 minutes, or carrying weights that would crush their delicate bone structure, or eating foods so spicy that Lyra accidentally tastes one and needs medical intervention. The peaceful Valari world faces a sudden crisis when a meteor strike damages their only water purification system, and Jake realizes he must venture into the toxic wasteland that surrounds their settlement to retrieve rare components, even though the environment would kill a Valari in under an hour from radiation exposure alone. Both Lyra and Kira insist on accompanying him, despite the danger, because they have specialized knowledge of the ancient technology, but Jake refuses until they demonstrate their own unique abilities, including Lyra's capacity to sense electromagnetic fields and Kira's photographic memory of every technical manual in their archives. The journey becomes a test of survival as Jake pushes through radiation sickness and toxic air, while the two Valari women witness firsthand why humans are considered the galaxy's most stubborn species. When he continues forward even after collapsing twice and coughing up blood, Lyra begins to understand that human strength comes not from physical superiority, but from an irrational refusal to accept defeat, as she watches Jake jury-rig a breathing apparatus from scraps and drag himself forward on a broken leg while delirious with fever and still cracking jokes about the situation. Kira discovers that humans possess an almost supernatural ability to adapt when she sees Jake's body somehow processing the toxic atmosphere over 3 days of exposure, developing a temporary resistance that her medical scanner insists should be impossible according to all known biological laws. They reach the ancient facility only to find it guarded by malfunctioning security drones that immediately attack, and Jake throws himself between the weapons and the Valari women, taking plasma burns across his back and arms while shouting instructions for them to reach the control panel. Lyra watches in horror and awe as Jake continues fighting despite injuries that expose muscle and bone, using nothing but a metal pipe against hover drones with energy weapons, and she realizes that humans don't just endure pain, but weaponize it. Channeling damage into fury, Kira manages to disable the security system, but not before Jake collapses from blood loss, and both women must combine their medical knowledge with the crude first aid supplies in his pack, learning that human medicine involves concepts like tourniquets and cauterization that seem barbarically simple yet effective. The return journey becomes desperate as Jake drifts in and out of consciousness, and the two Valari women must carry the components themselves while supporting his weight, and Lyra finds herself speaking to him, constantly afraid that if she stops talking he will stop breathing. During a rest period, Kira asks why humans fight so hard, and Jake explains through cracked lips that Earth was a death world where everything tried to kill humanity for millions of years, so they learned to be too stubborn to die and too mean to quit. They encounter a second crisis when a sandstorm hits and visibility drops to 0, but Jake somehow navigates using only the wind direction and his internal sense of magnetic north, guiding them to shelter in a cave while Lyra and Kira huddle against him for warmth, confused by how his body generates so much heat. The storm lasts 2 days, and during this time, the 3 survivors share stories as Jake describes Earth's oceans and mountains and predators, while the Valari women talk about their world's twin moons and crystal forests and philosophical traditions of harmony. Lyra realizes she has developed feelings beyond medical interest when she finds herself memorizing the pattern of scars across Jake's shoulders and the way his jaw clenches when he's hiding pain, and the rough texture of his hands compared to the smooth skin of Valari males. Kira notices the same pull and wonders if it's simply fascination with something alien or genuine connection as she watches him sleep fitfully and finds herself wanting to ease his nightmares, even though she doesn't understand what memories haunt a human warrior. When they finally reach the settlement, Jake collapses completely and sleeps for 36 hours straight, while Lyra and Kira take turns monitoring his vital signs and marveling at how his body repairs damage that should be permanent. The water system is restored, and the settlement celebrates, but Jake prepares to leave, explaining that a rescue ship will arrive soon, and he needs to return to his unit even though something in his expression suggests he's not eager to go back to that life. Both Lyra and Kira find themselves unable to imagine their world without this strange, resilient human who showed them that survival isn't about avoiding damage, but about refusing to let damage define you. On his last night before extraction, Jake sits with both women under the alien stars and admits that he's never felt more at home than during these weeks of recovery, even though he was poisoned and irradiated and nearly killed. Multiple times, Lyra takes his scarred hand and tells him that he taught her people something valuable about the strength that comes from enduring rather than avoiding hardship, and that she hopes he'll return someday when his war is over. Kira adds that humans might be crazy and reckless, and far too willing to trade their bodies for their goals, but that same quality makes them the most genuine people she's ever met, because a human who calls you friend has usually bled for the privilege. The rescue ship arrives at dawn, and Jake boards with coordinates for the Valari world locked into his personal database, and a promise that when the fighting ends, he knows exactly where he wants to go. Months later, both Lyra and Kira receive a transmission showing Jake alive and healing on a human medical station with a message that says simply they were right about humans being stubborn because he refused to die before seeing them again. The story ends with the two Valari women standing at the spaceport as a small ship lands and Jake emerges limping but grinning, and when Lyra asks how long he can stay, he replies with the best words they could hope for that he's done fighting other people's wars and ready to start building something worth protecting right here.